afternoon. Hello again. This is our fourth time this week. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy lunch break. Happy lunch break. I am super excited, guys. I literally say that every time I come on because I am really that excited. Even though today we're going to be talking about something pretty heavy. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. Good afternoon. I'm going to do what I did in the last video because that made a difference. I'm just going to type good afternoon so you could see the words from me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Because it is going to be a good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you want, you can just definitely throw up some good afternoons. I know you all are over your lunch hour probably. I am trying, as I am learning more about Facebook Live, because I absolutely love this platform, to make sure that I'm reaching my international audiences as well as my domestic audiences, I guess, if you will. And so throwing out some times, but this particular topic in terms of overcoming depression and anxiety has been highly requested. Many of you know I am still glowing from a recent speaking engagement at the Woman of Purpose conference. At the Woman of Purpose conference, I shared the spiritual practice for creating real happiness, and I talked to people about resting. I gave them a mechanic to know how to rest, and I shared a little bit of my story, what's been happening in this rest season. And for me, by other people's standards, it probably hasn't gone viral, but for my standard of virality, it's gone pretty viral just with respect to people inboxing me and asking me questions. You know, the line that was formed after I had delivered the speech, and, you know, I delivered my speech, someone else spoke after me, I went into the green room and I came out and there was still a line. And you all have been inboxing me, you have been DMing me on Instagram, you know, you have been emailing me. I mean, you have literally been pouring out many, many more questions in regards to, hi Tara, many more questions in regards to what I shared. And so I wanted to take this lunch hour while you're eating, while you're filling your belly, to really just talk candidly about what I think are the 4 T's for overcoming depression and anxiety. Because I think that, one, it's something that people just don't talk about, right? Like, no one is talking about this condition that a lot of people are dealing with. That's one reason. I think, 2, I specifically want to talk about it because I know that initially the experience in and of itself brings with it a lot of shame. It brings with it a lot of stress and overwhelm and frustration. But I think for me and other women and people like me who are actually living on purpose, who love the Lord, who for the most part are genuinely happy. It's like, I'm supposed to be immune to this depression and anxiety situation. Hi, Nye. I'm supposed to be immune. So if I'm not immune, and I'm not saying that this is accurate, I'm simply telling you how I felt. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, if I'm not immune, then holy fazoli's, like, what are we going to do? Like, people are really going to, you know, be struggling with this. And so I really wanted to, you know, maybe give a face to this condition that people don't always see. Like, depression and anxiety shows up on people who are on purpose, people who are believers, people who, in many regards, are doing exactly what it is that they want to do. And so I want to sort of put a face to that so that you can see the difference between you know, the person and maybe what they're experiencing. And then I think the last thing is, just in my culture, you know, I'm a Black woman, depression and anxiety, mental illness is just not discussed. And there's so much shame and there's so much like hide it away, that we just don't talk about it. And I just really feel like a lot of people in my community, and especially a lot of women in my community, are probably actively functioning depressed people or actually functioning anxious people. And, you know, my brand, my business, everything is about creating real happiness. And what I realized, hi Alexandria, what I realized is that so many people are coming to me because they want to be happy. And in me serving them, they're able to, you know, build up some esteem, some confidence, some self-worth, but they are dealing with deeper issues that I am actually not qualified to address. But how do I tell them I'm not qualified to address that, but also still build a business? How do I say to someone, hey, you need professional help without being offensive. And I think that in the African American community, especially among women, it's just not something that's talked about, because we're like, oh, that's what depression looks like. That's what anxiety looks like. It's her over there. It's not me. I'm bigger, better, stronger, etc. than that. And it's just like, the truth of the matter is like, depression doesn't knock on the door. It's not like, Stacey, you're about to be depressed for the next 365 days. Like, depression doesn't knock. Like, it doesn't give, anxiety doesn't give notice. Like, when it happens, and you are probably just as shocked that it's happening to you as the people that are around you. And so I want to talk about what it takes to overcome depression and anxiety. One, because I just think that this is something that needs to be highlighted among my community. And two, because I really want amazing, spectacular, wonderful people like yourselves to feel confident and comfortable going to go get the help that you deserve and desire, so that you can continue to do your thing. Because had I not done what I needed to do, like these 4 T's that I'm about to break down for you, I wouldn't be able to do this live. I wouldn't have been able to speak on stage last week. I literally wouldn't have been able to do what it is that I'm called to do. And I think that so many of us just aren't living our dreams. We're not creating real happiness. We're not enjoying our lives. We're not breathing, because we're actually dealing with this condition that is pretty pervasive. So I wanted to address it. So welcome, 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 everyone. I am so honored that you are here. It's going to be a little bit of a longer live, just because I want to give you guys time to ask questions. I'm going to be much of an open book, but let's get down to brass tacks. So I think that there are really 4 T's to overcoming depression and anxiety. And the first T is going to be something that you probably know I'm going to say, because I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again and explain it. But the first T to overcoming depression and anxiety is therapy. And therapy gets a bad rap. Right now, everybody is a guru. Everybody is a, expert. Everybody can help you change your life in 30 days. Everybody has the secret sauce. Like, everybody can give you the thing that is quote unquote missing from your life, so that you can live better, do better, and be out here living your best life, as Oprah suggests. But the issue with that is, hi Douglas, the issue with that is that therapy is different than reading a blog. It's different than reading a book. It's different than having a life coach. It's different than having a friend. It's different than having a pastor. It's different than all of these other roles and tools and resources that you can use to supplement helping you to overcome depression and anxiety. It's a completely different thing. And the reason why it's the number one thing that you need to overcome depression and anxiety is because, as I mentioned at the top, depression nor anxiety knocks. They do not knock and say, hey, you are about to be depressed. It typically comes out of nowhere. And that's another myth. People think, oh, we have to suffer something. You have to be going through something in order for you to be depressed and anxious. It's like, no, that comes out of nowhere. And the issue is that when it comes out of nowhere, when you try to use a pastor, a friend, a book, a blog, or a life coach to help you through that process, they are going to meet you at that state of depression from their perspective. So if you go to your friend, she's just gonna be like, oh girl, I know you just went through a breakup, you're all right. Because she's your friend. She knows you just went through a breakup, so she may be dismissive of depression because she knows you just went through a breakup. If you go to your life coach, she may be dismissive of the depression because her job is to get you over the hump. What I'm saying is that therapy is the tool or the resource that you use, so that way you can actually have a trained professional digging through the complexities of your mind and honoring the things that come up, so that you can actually get to a place of actually overcoming the depression and anxiety. Because in my experience, there are these ups and downs, right? Like, you suddenly will feel sad, and then you talk to your best friend, and then you feel better, and you're like, okay, I'm good. But then all of a sudden you're down again. That is an issue. But when you go to therapy, your therapist actually helps you to become stable, so that it's not like a teeter-totter. It's not like a yo-yo. It's not like a roller coaster ride. You're actually stable. And, just from my experience, let me just tell you guys how the depression and anxiety showed up for me. It was at the end of the year. I was just so much success. I mean, you guys saw me last year, like everything was amazing. It was just a really wonderful, productive, amazing year for me. I'm stretching myself from an entrepreneurship perspective, stretching myself spiritually. I'm doing all these amazing, wonderful things. In January, I go to New York because I'm thinking about expanding my conference to another city. I go to New York. When I get back from New York, I happen to be on a plane. It gets me home like around like 11 o'clock midnight, very close to the evening. And my mom picks me up from the airport. Things are fine. I'm feeling fine. I walk into my house. And when I walk into my house, I suddenly am hit with like paralyzing, crippling fear and anxiety. So much so that my stomach turns. I step outside and I throw up because I'm like, oh, whoa, and I mean, it just whirlwind just hit me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I try to go back into my house. I can't go back into my house. Hi, Larissa. I can't go back into my house because every time I move towards the door, hi, Precious. Every time I move towards the door, the anxiety is like railing up. And so at the time I had an office. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to my office. I'll just sleep in my office. I go to my office. I try to go home the next day. I can't, because as soon as I get to my threshold, I'm starting, that anxiety is coming. I sleep in my office for a week. Not that there's a bed in my office, but just because I could not go back home, right? Then after I sleep in my office for a week, I'm like, okay, this is uncomfortable. So then I rent an Airbnb in my hometown. I have a whole entire home. Rent an Airbnb in my hometown for a week because I can't, every time I try to go home, I need to vomit. I start crying. I'm overwhelmed. I'm anxious, ringing in my head. And I didn't know at the time, but these were all symptoms of anxiety surfacing. Hi, Jenna. These are all symptoms of anxiety surfacing. But I'm having the time of my life. So what I'm doing? I'm dismissing all of these feelings as me being stressed because my conference is coming up. Me being stressed because I just had all these wins and I don't know how to, really appreciate them. Me being overwhelmed at the prospect that I could go to New York and, have this amazing time and then come back. It's just literally me dismissing this anxiety that's coming up. So I say, okay, you're anxious, but you got to push through. You got to make your conference happen. So I make a plan. I'm like, oh, I'll just go to Chicago for 6 weeks and I'll focus on my conference, get a little distance from my home, rest, 4 weeks into my 6-week trip, I realized at this point, my conference has exceeded my personal beliefs about money in terms of me borrowing money. I'm overextended myself. I canceled my conference. And even though that sounds like a bad thing, it didn't really pan out as bad. I was able to honor the people who purchased either by refund or giving them coaching services, etc. So I canceled my conference. I spend the next 2 weeks trying to clean up and tie up the loose ends for that. And then I try to go home. Again, I had driven to Chicago. I try to go home. I'm in the car. I'm trying to drive home. And my vision gets blurred. I can't see. And so I'm like, oh, what's going on? I need some new glasses. These glasses are broken. What? When I say that, I could not see anything in front of me because that's how petrified I was to go home. Now, obviously, I don't know this at the time. I'm just experiencing these symptoms. So I'm like, all right, let me just stay another week. Maybe I just need to relax. So then I plan to stay another week. And it just so happens that I had a photo shoot in Omaha where I was actually going to be on the cover of this magazine and all this stuff. And so I was like, well, I'll just stay 2 weeks until my photo shoot and then I'll fly home, come back and then drive back. Maybe it's just I don't feel like driving because I'm just not a person who really likes to drive. So then I try to get on the plane to go do my photo shoot, have a whole entire panic attack. The stewardess, have you ever been escorted off of a plane before as a grown adult woman who's crying and can't pull herself together? I could not control my emotions in this situation. And I'm like, something is wrong with me. I don't know what it is, but something is wrong. So I go back to the space that I was renting and I reach out to the woman who was leasing it to me and I'm like, hey, is there any way that I could extend this for another month because something's going on? I need to figure out what it is. Because even in my mind at this point, I'm like, man, you're really stressed. You better get back home so that you can figure this out. But my body, my heart, my mind just would not let me go home. So, hi, Crystal. It would not let me go home. And so I said, okay, I'll stay another month. And inside of that month, when I finally said, okay, I'll stay another month, the anxiety was what was overwhelming me. But as soon as I had emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially made the decision to stay another month, suddenly the depression kicked in. And I literally was laid out in my bed and I could not get up from my bed for days. When I say that I went in that room and I could not come out of that room, even now thinking about it, I'm like, I cannot believe I was stuck in this bed for days because I was so afraid that if I went out the house, something was going to happen. So it's like I had all this anxiety, and then the anxiety turned into depression. And then the depression is like, you're sad, you're bad, you're wrong, you're this, you're this, you're this. I tried to call friends, and I'm not saying I did a good job. I tried to call friends. I had friends that were calling me, and I had people here in Chicago that were supporting me, and I could not get out of bed, period. Like, not, oh, she's just exaggerating. No, oh, she's just being literal. Like, could not get out of bed. And so as I'm laying in bed one day, like, I finally realized, I'm like, oh, you're depressed because it's been 4 or 5 days, I think, given, and this is, let me keep it 100. This is how I was tracking my time. I was following someone's Instagram stories, and I watched how many times she cooked dinner, and I was like, oh, well, she's made 6 meals. It's been 6 days. That's how I knew I hadn't moved, because there was someone else that I was following, and I saw that she had cooked 6 dinners. That's a problem. So while I'm laying there, I finally am like, okay, you're depressed. Something's going on. Like, you need help with this. And so I reach out to some therapists. I reach out to like about 4 therapists. A therapist calls me back. She gets me in that day. I like put on some clothes. I drive to her office, and I'm like, something is wrong with me. Like, I'm petrified. I cannot move. I cannot go home. I can't answer my phone. I can't breathe right now. Like, I feel sitting in here with you. I feel like I'm about to die. Something's wrong with me. So she's like doing her initial intake consultation and stuff like that. And she's like working with me, and she's just like, okay, boom, this is what we're going to do together. Yes, exactly, Jenna, I got numb for a moment, and then I got completely terrified. So it was like numb and terror. Like, it was like nothing I had ever experienced. And for me, the contrast between how well my life was going and suddenly how confused and incapable and like useless I felt, it was just so much. So then she says, all right, we're going to go week to week, and we're going to do this. And she starts to give me some techniques. And here's the thing. I had talked to a friend before. I had talked to the people who were in Omaha. I had talked to people who cover me spiritually. Nothing that they said compared to the 35 minutes that I sat in that therapist's office, and she said, hey, this is how you breathe, Stacey, because I literally forgot how to breathe. So in my first session, in addition to just doing the intake, she taught me how to breathe again. Then she was just like, this is what I want you to do when you get home, A, B, C, D, E. And so when I'm telling people to go to therapy, I'm saying it because you don't even know the measure of like pain or issues that you're dealing with. And sometimes we burden our spiritual leaders or our friends or our coaches with these deep-seated problems, because check this out. That was just the initial time I went to therapy. This is not even including all of the stuff that we have since unpacked. And I'm sharing that story of like terror and pain and overwhelm because I want you guys to understand how I feel. I want you guys to understand the measure of pain that I'm in. I'm not saying I was in the bed because I want y'all to feel bad. I'm not saying I was, she had to teach me how to breathe because no, I want you to know these are the mental faculties that were lost in this season. And I promise you that not a coach, not a friend, not a blog, not a book, not a spiritual leader would have been able to do anything for me in that moment, because they are not professionals. They're not mental professionals. They're not like mental health professionals. And when you are dealing with depression and anxiety, you owe it to yourself to give yourself a mental health professional. And if you think about it, you'll get a professional for everything else. You'll get a professional to do your hair. You'll get a professional to get your glasses. A professional will clean your ears. A professional will probably design some of your clothes, your bags, your shoes. A professional does everything for you. But then when it's time to get your mind, which essentially controls all of it, right? Your mind controls your body. Your mind controls what you decide to put on that day. You will hesitate to get a professional? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm sorry, I just got a little crunk right there. You'll hesitate to get a professional. And I just want people to start seeing a therapist and therapy as choosing to invest in a professional for your mind. It is necessary. It does not make sense to wear professional designer labels, to go to an ophthalmologist, to get your hair done by a hairstylist, and the brain that can appreciate all of those things is in a state of dysfunction. It does not make sense to do that. So the number one T to overcoming depression and anxiety, no matter how severe it is, you can be, because there's a scale, right? You can be at a 1 where it's light and, something is off, but it's not that bad. You can be at a 1, you can be at a 10 where I was. A therapist is the first thing that you should consider. And I tell people often, it's like, just like one teacher is different from another teacher. Therapists are different from other therapists. So you may have to shop around, but it doesn't change the fact that the first thing that you need is a mental health professional to dig through your mind. The second T that you need to overcome depression and anxiety is a treatment plan. And people confuse therapy with a treatment plan. Therapy is just a phase inside of your treatment plan, right? So when I finally went to therapy and she got me from the crazed state of like pure petrification, then we actually had to outline a treatment plan. And a treatment plan can include medication. It can include exercise. It can include lifestyle changes. It can include hospitalization. There are so many things a treatment plan can include. And my particular treatment plan included a lifestyle change, which is actually very drastic. Like, there are a lot of people who don't like medication. And if you're one of those people who don't like medication, understand that if you are dealing with depression and anxiety, it's likely then going to be necessary that you have a drastic lifestyle change, because a part of the reason why the medication is suggested is because you are not capable of managing your current lifestyle. So if you are choosing to move through depression and anxiety without medication, which is a form of treatment, then understand that a that a lifestyle change is likely necessary. And so for me, I opted not to do medication. There was one point where it got super dark, and my friend who was really here helping me a lot, like, I went to him and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to have to take the medicine because it's bad. Like, it's bad. I think I'm going to have to take the medicine. And it just so happened that my therapist, like, when I went in, she was just like, no, I think you're fine. Let's go one more week. Let's try this again. And for me, my personal reasons for not wanting to take medication is simply because I'm a super sensitive person, and my body responds so swiftly to anything. Like, just responds very swiftly. And so my previous experience, which was 10 years ago, the last time I had any sort of a mental situation was 10 years ago. I was on 9 different medications, and the medication combination was so wrong for me that I actually attempted suicide and wound up in a hospital to like manage it. And so that bad experience, plus me knowing that my body responds very quickly to medication and not in a positive way, I really wanted to try to manage this the depression and anxiety without medication. But that meant that I had to do a drastic lifestyle change. And so for me, my drastic lifestyle change literally was me moving hundreds of miles away. I came to Chicago for a temporary reason, but I literally could not go home. Like, not because I didn't want to, but because, like, getting on a plane, people had to carry me off. Like, getting in my car, I would go blind. Like, I literally had to come to terms with the fact that, you know what, Stacey, right now, your literal city is a trigger for you, and you are going to be unable to return to that place for a while. And people are going to ask you about that, and you're going to have to tell them, hey, I'm resting. I don't know when I'm going to come back. Doesn't mean I don't want to be there, but the treatment plan that I'm undergoing does not allow for me to return home, because the effects of me being in my home environment is too crippling for me to be able to progress through the treatment plan. So it's like, after you go to therapy, you have to understand that there's going to be a treatment that your therapist applies. That may be you coming to therapy twice a week. That may be you moving from your home location into a new location. Other drastic lifestyle changes that I did. You guys know that I got off social media. I think I was off for around 6 or 7 months. But in addition, I closed my entire business. And when I say close my business, I don't mean like, oh, I was kind of doing, no, I mean, I closed it. Like, I demolished it. I was, in my heart, I was like, if I never speak again, I'm fine. Not because I wanted to, but that's just the way that, the depression was showing up. But I literally closed my business. I canceled, nearly 3/4 worth of speaking contracts. Like, I canceled my conference. Like, I've only been working for the last 30 days. So I have not earned any money for the year of 2017, because my depression and my anxiety was so severe. Hi, Grace. Hi, Tiffany. Was so severe that for me, in order for me to manage it and get through it, I needed a drastic lifestyle change. Now, I'm not in any way suggesting that be your treatment plan. I'm simply saying, understand that you're going to have to take on a treatment plan. And treatment plans are not fun. You think my friends and family are okay with me just not working? No, nobody in my life is okay with me not working. That I'm not even okay with me not working. There are things that I want to do for my son that I cannot do for him because there are things that I cannot do because I have not earned any money. However, that's the treatment plan that I have to go on so that way I can overcome this thing called depression and anxiety. And I'm sharing that with you because I think sometimes we think, oh, I'm gonna go to therapy, and if my therapist isn't amazing and doesn't, make things happen, then, it's her fault. No, you have to also follow the treatment. And if the treatment means that you will disappoint yourself and other people for a year so that you can be mentally healthy enough to manage your life, including parenting, including being a good friend, including being a businesswoman, then that's just what you're going to have to do. And for me, that was a part of my treatment plan, which is, again, the reason why I don't recommend my treatment plan to everyone. Like, I'm an extreme person. This is an extreme treatment plan, right? But there, it's like your treatment plan isn't going to be easy because your treatment plan is going to detoxify the things that were bringing the anxiety and the stress into your life, right? And so for me, closing my business, for me, getting off social, for me, not talking to friends and family, because like, I'm telling you, if I would have been talking to friends and family during this season, you all would have seen the very worst, scariest part of my mind. And I deserve the privacy to fix that before I'm showing up. So it's not a measure of like, I'm not talking to you because I don't want you to see it. It's like, no, I deserve that privacy to heal properly so that way I'm not vomiting on you pain and toxic things that have absolutely nothing to do with you. So it was a very drastic lifestyle change, and I'm yet still in the middle of it, right? Like I'm still in the middle of my therapy treatment plan. But it's the second T. Like, you have to be willing to go through the treatment. If your treatment is medication, you can't get on the medication and then stop when you feel better. You need to stop when your treatment plan has completed. You can't start exercising and then stop when your body looks better, but you're not like, but if your therapist says, exercise needs to be regular, you don't stop when your body feels better. You have to keep going. And even with me, like this lifestyle change, there are going to be some things that are permanent, I shut down my business, so the way that I'm rebuilding my business is completely different than the way that it was before, because the business model I had was not sustainable, period. So now I have to rebuild my business. And so it's like I'm going through all of these things, but all of that is a part of the treatment plan. And I think most people who are depressed or anxious, they do not buy into their treatment plan. And because they don't buy into their treatment plan, they don't actually overcome the experience of anxiety and depression, right? So there's a few more people that are coming on. If you are just joining me, I'm talking about the 4 T's to overcoming depression and anxiety. The first T is therapy. The second T is treatment. I talk about how therapy is definitely different than a blog, a life coach, a spiritual leader, a friend, a mentor, etc. Like, therapy is a person with a unique role who can serve you so that you can get through this experience of depression and anxiety. And then I talked about the treatment plan and how you need to honor your entire treatment plan and how a therapist is a component of your treatment plan. So the third thing, the third T of overcoming depression and anxiety is thankfulness. And I talk about this a lot, but I like this one because I know right now I've potentially just suggested 2 things that people can't afford, right? A lot of people cannot afford to go to therapy. A lot of people cannot afford a drastic lifestyle change, medication. They can't afford a treatment plan. They can't afford a gym membership to exercise. I get it. There are a lot of things that you can't afford. And so it's like, okay, Stacey, I still have this depression and anxiety. And I feel like this is where this T comes in. Being thankful is a game changer. So I mentioned, I had that week where I'm laying in the bed and I can't do anything, like I can't function. And so, one of the things that like sort of helped me to start moving. No, Tara, the third T is thankfulness. The second T is treatment. I appreciate you, taking these notes. That's wonderful. I was laying in the bed and I remember after I had called my therapist, or I actually called 4 therapists at the time, because I believe that, you got to find the right one, So I'm laying in the bed and I remember like laying there and being like, okay, I'm thankful that she called me back. And I remember as soon as I said, I'm thankful that she called me back, like suddenly there was this wave of relief And all the bombarding, like negative thoughts, like you're worthless, you're bad, you're a fraud, you know, you can't pick up the phone, who do you think you are? Because when you're depressed and anxious, you have ruminating thoughts. And I don't know if you guys know ruminating. Ruminating is when you just muster over something, like you just around and around, it's not going anywhere, you're not expressing it, it's not helpful, you're just ruminating on. And so the major ruminating thoughts that I would have is that I was a fraud, right? I'm the ambassador of happiness, but you haven't changed your clothes in 5 days. Let's see how that's going to work out. You know, like it was bad. It was bad, guys. You know, I travel around the world inspiring people to be happy, but I can't even get out the bed right now. You're a fraud. Like, so my major ruminating thoughts were, you're a fraud, and this isn't real. Like, all the stuff you thought you did this year, that's not real, because if it was real, you wouldn't be here. And it was like, you know, Phil, that is a great question. Pastor Phil said, how do you find the right therapist? I actually did a YouTube video where I do a tutorial about it, but the number one place to find a therapist is on psychology.com. If you go to my YouTube channel, I want to say it's the last video, but on there, I literally show you how to go to psychology.com, because there's all this information. You put in your zip code, you look for specialty, you look for issue, you read, and I literally go, I think it's like 8 steps, and I walk you through those 8 steps, because I want people to know how to actually do this. So anyway, I say thank you. And suddenly when I say thank you, I feel the relief of not thinking that I'm a fraud. I feel the relief of not thinking that I'm going to be found out. There's an interruption in the pattern of thought of me being worthless, because here's what I know scientifically: you cannot hold a negative thought and a positive thought at the same time. You can't hold 2 conflicting thoughts. So when you're expressing thankfulness or when you're expressing gratitude, it literally interrupts the bombarding thoughts of negativity. And it's difficult, right? Like, I was only able to say that one expression in like a whole 8-hour day, but it was still better than nothing. And then the next day I could say a little bit more, and then the next day I could say a little bit more. And so what I encourage people who are dealing with depression and anxiety is to express gratitude. And like, you guys know, I do an hour every morning now, but before that, like, it just was like, as soon as I opened my eyes, I would just figure out something to be thankful for. And the God's honest truth was, I used to be thankful because my heart was still beating. I would be sarcastic with myself. Thank you for these chapped lips. Thank you for these ashy elbows. Like, because I was so mad and angry that I was depressed and whatnot. But it's like, the benefit of me doing that is, even when I was being sarcastic, I was still shifting my energy, shifting my vibration, interrupting the mental patterns that were digging a groove in my mind that were keeping me depressed. And it's like, if you can't afford a therapist right now, if you can't afford a treatment plan, you can afford to open your mouth and just say, thank you. I am grateful for, and I would say this all the time, I am grateful for my heartbeat. Then I would put my hand over my heart. I am grateful that my eyes are still blinking. I am grateful for my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fingers. I would be grateful for my pillowcases. I would be grateful for my bed. When I walked on these hardwood floors of this apartment, I would be grateful for these hardwood floors. Like, it took me a while to be grateful for the abundance that I am aware that I have, because depression and anxiety does that. Like, it compresses things so you feel like you have nothing. But be grateful for the things that you can touch. I'm grateful that I can still taste. I'm grateful that I'm breathing. Like, and just, if you are, severely depressed and anxious, try one thing that you're grateful for a day. And then try to go to 3 things. And if you can, thinking it, you need to do more than think it, because you actually have to interrupt the thought, right? So it's like, it's not enough for me to be like, no, I actually have to say, I am grateful for my heartbeat. Because what happens is you hear it in your mind, you hear it in your ears, and it's easier for it to be digested by your heart and your mind. And that's what you want. So the 3rd T is all about being thankful. Thankful, 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 so that you can interrupt the negative thought process. And then over time, what will happen is as you're interrupting those negative thoughts, what will happen is you will grow stronger mentally. And maybe in that mental strength, you'll find the courage and the time and the resources to maybe ask someone to help you get a therapist, or ask someone to help you pay for your treatment plan, right? And then the 4th and final T, and we're coming towards the end, but if you guys have any questions, start thinking about those questions, and you can definitely start popping them in now, and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. The 4th T is timeout, is to take a timeout. And this is a T that goes highly overlooked. I try to overlook it because, again, depression and anxiety don't knock. They don't give a notice. They're not like, Stacey, guess what? I'm anxiety. I've been meaning to hang out with you, so I'm coming next week. No, depression is not like, girl, you knew I was coming. This is your season for depression. No, they don't tell you when they're coming. So when they come, they're literally an interruption in your life. But what happens is most of us say, I'm gonna fight this depression with my body, even though it's this mental thing that's upsetting your body, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna fight through it. I'm gonna do everything. And it's like, no, you are now dealing with one of the most severe mental and emotional illnesses in all the land. So you have a right to take a timeout. Like, and when I say timeout, like it could literally be a timeout from work if you have that privilege, right? Like you can, I'm an entrepreneur, so it's a little bit different. But if you work for a company, being honest with your company, depending on the relationship, like obviously this is not a warrior cry for you to be irresponsible, but like once you acknowledge that you're actually depressed and anxious, I'm simply saying be intentional about taking a time out and don't beat yourself up because you've taken that time out. So for me, the way that my depression worked, like it hit me, right? And then it was very, very dark for like 4 months. And then April 28th, I woke up, right? And I woke up not on my own. I literally woke up because a friend came to town. He was trying to talk to me. He was like, oh, whoa, I can't help you with this. I need to send you somewhere. So he literally put me on a plane. I went somewhere and I had these 4 intensive, thanks, Pastor Phil. I had these 3 intensive therapy days with this amazing therapist. I feel like she was my personal earthly angel. 4 intense days with her, and she was able to scrape off that top layer of like, I hate myself, you're disgusting, you're worthless, you're nothing, you know, shouldn't go outside. Like she was able to scrape off that top layer, and because she scraped off that top layer, I was finally able to I didn't even realize I was in Chicago until April 28th. I left Omaha, Nebraska in January. Didn't realize I was in Chicago until April 28th. Because here's the thing. You don't know your location when you spend your whole every day in the bed. So when people were reaching out to me like, you know, I miss you, I can't see you. I'm like, what do they want me to do? But I didn't realize for them, it's like, you are states away from us. What's going on? But for me, I'm just in a room. So I can't even feel that I'm in another city because that's how dark it was. So April 28th is when I sort of woke up from like the darkness and I was like, holy moly, I've been in Chicago all this time? Oh my gosh, you know, so then I'm like looking around and like orientating myself. And then I'm like, okay, I've been in Chicago for 4 months. What's been going on while I've been gone? So then I'm trying to figure out like, what's been going on. So I'm now finally reaching out to people. And when they're parroting back to me, like what's been going on, I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, so I say that to say, when I first woke up, I didn't want to honor my time out, right? Like, cause I was like, oh my God, I'm in Chicago. It's my favorite city. But other people weren't reacting like that. They'd be like, you were been gone for a quarter and you just gonna show up and act like nothing happened. And I'm like, I just feel so good. Don't you feel good that I feel good? And it's like, no, we want to know what's going on. But it's like, I don't have an explanation because I didn't know, you know, like just in terms of the way that my depression and anxiety works, that's sort of how it was. So then what happened is around that time, I wanted to take myself out of timeout and I wanted to like try to get back to my life and I wanted to try to like get back to being my regular self. But the issue is that like, no, Stacey, you are still hurting and you are still depressed. You just got that top layer scraped off because you did these intense days. Now that top layer is scraped off and you're present, because that's the other thing, right? Like for 4 months, let's just say 5, because April 28th, May. For 5 months, I wasn't present to my own life. So for imagine 5 months and you can't recall time. You do, like for me, it was a day. Like it was like I went to sleep in January. I woke up in May. It's one day. Why? Like, but when you're not present, you lose time. So I literally lost 5 months. And so me waking up thinking that everything was going to be the same. And it's like, no, that's unrealistic. And I needed to intentionally say, no, you need to extend this time out so that you can be present to yourself first and then begin to be present to the other people that are around you. Because if you try to immerse yourself back into the lifestyle that you had, you're going to be right back here, and it's going to be a problem. And I think it's hard for people to take a time out because we believe that so many people are counting on us. And the truth is, so many people are counting on you. But listen to me closely. If you lose your mind, it does not matter how many people are counting on you, because you will not be able to do anything for them. So, while it's accurate that people are counting on you, it does not matter to you overcoming your depression and anxiety, because you can't rush the process. Like whatever is the cause or the root of your depression or anxiety, nothing can rush that process. No amount of hoping, praying, wishing, pressure can push you faster out of that process than what that process is that is necessary for it to take, right? And people don't want to honor the fact that, like, this thing has interrupted my life, and because it's interrupted your life, the best thing that you can do for you and the people around you is to intentionally take a time out. And, I mentioned, taking a time out from work. I think taking a time out from your friendships, right? Because I was a horrible friend this season. And thank God for the people in my life who like really love me and really know me. Like, they're not holding me to this horrible season. They're like, no, Stacey, we get it, right? So, you need to take a time out on your friendships. You put because it was so severe, had to take a time out on parenting. And thank God for my son's father. He is the absolute best co-parenting father in all the land, because when I say he picked up that whole entire thing, he picked up that whole entire thing. I had to take a break from parenting. And the reason why my time out was from parenting is because the depression and anxiety, and I'll talk about this in another, actually I'm talking about it on my podcast, is the result of a condition called PTSD. And so PTSD is short for post-traumatic stress disorder. And my post-traumatic stress disorder involves some really horrible things. But the issue is that when that stuff is triggered, I don't think properly about parenting. I don't think properly about things, and it's better, in my opinion, for my son to be in a safe, healthy environment than watching his mom like curl up in a ball because something triggered something and now I can't function, So, I had to take a break from parenting because of the way that my trauma was showing up. I had to take a break from reading. Like, I couldn't read to save my life. Like, couldn't happen. I took a break from social media. When you are depressed and anxious, social media is probably the absolute worst place in all the land to be on, because it looks like everyone is advancing. It looks like, with all the quotes and with all the life coaches saying, do this and your life will be better right now, it looks like it's your fault that you're depressed and you're just not working hard enough. So taking a time out from that, I think that, just thinking about all of the different things that you do and saying, okay, I'm going to intentionally take a time out from these different things because this illness is weighing heavily on me. And if I actually want to overcome it, if I actually want to be able to heal from it, I need space to be able to do that. And you're not going to get space by carving out a sliver inside of what it is that you're already doing. So a timeout is absolutely essential. And you also need a timeout in the same way you give a kid a timeout because they're throwing a temper tantrum. You're like, you know what? You need a timeout. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with you. You need a timeout. You need a timeout. Something's wrong with you. You are actively throwing a temper tantrum in your life through this depression and anxiety, and you need a timeout to go somewhere and collect yourself. Like, the principle applies to you as well. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that. So just a quick review. If you guys have any questions, drop them below. This is the time where I will answer the questions. But the 4 T's of overcoming depression and anxiety are therapy, therapy, therapy. Therapy is simply investing in a professional for your mind. And we invest in a professional for our mind because our mind literally controls everything else. Everything. It controls your body. It controls the relationships. It controls your business. It controls your career. Your mind is what in charge or manages everything else. The second T is a treatment plan. A treatment plan is actively the things that you are going to do to get better, which includes a therapist. A therapist or therapy is simply a part of the treatment plan, but a treatment plan can include medication, lifestyle changes, exercises, etc. The third T is thankfulness. That is you intentionally deciding to be grateful so that you can interrupt the ruminating negative thoughts that are going on in your mind right now while you are anxious and depressed. And then the fourth one is taking a time out and intentionally deciding to pause the activities that you have going on in your life so that you can heal properly and holistically. And that's it. Those are the 4 T's to overcoming depression and anxiety.